Welcome back to Virtualize Everything. Today I wanted to give you a little bit of a quick walkthrough about how I got Web Machine N7 running with VirtualBox on my Mac. I believe this tutorial should also apply to anybody using VirtualBox in Windows or Linux, but have not tested that. So I ran into quite a few complications when I tried setting up my first vulnerable machine from Phone Hub, and that is the Web Machine N7 that I decided to try for my first one. Let's take a look first here at what this machine comprises of. And it's a very simple Apache web server that's got some directories, and we're going to go through and look for some flags in it. This video is not really intended to be a walkthrough on pen testing or anything else, but more of a talk about how I actually got it up and running. Because believe it or not, I struggled quite a bit on getting this machine up and running and getting it up and running on somewhat private of a network where I could actually begin testing on it and work with it or even find it. So I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about how I did that. The first thing I needed or ended up needing was a blank Ethernet adapter, whether this is a port on your machine or a USB adapter. That's going to depend on your machine. But I needed an Ethernet adapter that wasn't connected to my home personal network. And you can see I've done that here with this AX88X72A Ethernet adapter. Honestly, this is an old Linksys adapter. It's 10100. It's nothing special at all. It's just something that I had laying around in my closet that I could use. So going into settings, and if we look at either all three of these machines, they're all using the same thing. And I chose to virtualize Kali here on the same machine. You don't necessarily, using this technique, have to have everything on the same machine, but you do definitely want to have it, from all of my reading and research and even my understanding, have it in a place where it is separate from your main network. That way, if you're putting payloads in or malware or anything else, it's completely separate from your network and you don't have to worry about trying to control it. So if we hit settings here and go to networks, you can see that I've chosen a bridged adapter. And again, I've configured that same network adapter. And all three machines are the same bridged adapter. Now, the next thing I had to do, because the web machine here has a network configuration of DHCP enabled, meaning that it's going to be looking for its IP address from a server. I actually had to set up a DHCP server. Now, I chose to do that in a separate machine. You probably could have done this on your Kali machine if you wanted. I didn't want to. I thought it was easier to spin up a separate server. And let's go ahead and look at kind of the process that I used to do that. So what I used here was a Ubuntu machine that I spun up. I just installed a version of Ubuntu server on here, and you can actually see from my last output here on the screen that I'm using ISC DHCP server. And if I move up here through a few commands, you'll see I use nano to edit the etc DHCP DHCPD config file right here. And in this config file, I uncommented some stuff and commented some stuff. So these two lines here were uncommented when we started. We commented them out. We didn't need them. These two were left alone. We made it authoritative, and we did that because it's the only DHCP server on this network. So it is the authority and has total rights over everything. And then we uncommented a bunch of lines here. So the first one I uncommented and edited. And by the way, you're editing information in here. These start out as 10 networks, and you're editing the information in for your correct network. So we made a subnet. We entered our IP range for our network, our subnet mask, which is going to be a class C subnet mask, /24 normal is 255.255.255.0. Then we tell it the range of IP addresses that we want to use, which we chose to be 10 to 50. We actually made this machine a static 10 so that it had a static IP address here. And then we told it our domain name. We're not connected to the internet, but I found that I was having a hard time getting it to run without actually having this. And I had to do the same thing to the subnet mask here, 255.255.0. And then we told it where the router was. Again, this was dummy information that I entered, but a router is quite commonly found at that address. And the DHCP server didn't want to run without it. It kept getting errors. So I just uncommented it out, let it give the information, and nothing happens. And then our default lease time and our max lease time are identical as above. I don't believe you need that. I was playing around. I was having a hard time getting the server to start, and it got added and it got left. So at that point, I closed out the window and I ran the command systemctl restart to go ahead and restart that. And then I checked the status with systemctl status, and you can see that it's up and running. So I had an up and running DHCP server, but because my web machine and both my call box as well had already been running, I was having a hard time getting an IP address. So I just went ahead at that point and rebooted them. And I got IP address on my call machine, which unfortunately, the web machine I can't log into. It's by design, and I'm supposed to try to break into it. So I didn't know if that had, but felt safe in making the assumption that since I was getting an IP address on my Kali machine, that I was also going to get it here on the web machine. So over here at Kali, you can see I have various windows up here. And I more or less left them up here to prove to you that everything was working. So we went through, we did a full scan of the network. So over here at the Kali machine, we started out by using the command IPA to verify that we did indeed have an IP address on our Ethernet port here at this virtual machine. And it turned out that it was 192.168.13 found right here. So now that we knew we had a working DHCP server, we were able to, or I was able to go over and use a tool called Nmap to scan, and I did find all three servers. We knew DHCP was 10, and we knew that the call box was 13 from our, from our IPA, and we knew the call box was 13 from doing our IPA command and identifying that we had an IP address. So 12 must have been the web machine, and I started to run a few more commands here which dug into that particular IP address of the machine and identified that it was indeed an Apache server and it had port 80 open, which our initial scan had told us that it was port 80, but I was able to identify at this point that it was a web server and kind of start working through. And that's getting more into the penetration world, which this video wasn't meant for. This video was meant to tell you how I actually got this machine up and running, because I think a lot of the machines on VoneHub are built this way, or the few I downloaded in trying to do some other projects were built this way. And this technique, I think, will work for more machines than just this web machine N7. Once we had the IP address of this, I was just able to enter it here into the web browser, and it's port 80, so you don't have to put any port after that, and actually view the profile. Now I'm going to go ahead and actually try to find the flag inside of this machine and explore around. Drop in the comments if you actually want that type of content. We've stuck to being more of a home lab channel, and we have done some penetration testing, as me and partner early on in the channel both enjoy this type of content, although we don't traditionally do it as much as either of us would enjoy doing as a hobby, but it was the reason why our channel was initially founded. And anyways, so drop a comment, let us know if you'd like tutorials and walkthroughs on this stuff. I'm going to be trying to do more and more of that in my personal life. I am actually exploring going back to college. As some of you know, when we first started this channel, I was going to college for cybersecurity. I've had to put that on pause because my life changed, but I am exploring the option in discussions with my wife about maybe going back and working more on that degree. And some of this is just that. It just finding out if I still have the passion. Anyways, enough rant about my life. And yeah, have a good night. Drop a comment if you want to see more content like this. As always, have a good night.